Hey, everybody, this is Kai Deering, and I am coming at you live every day since I believe a couple of days ago, all the way through Cyber Monday. And why is that? Well, I'm going to be sharing some valuable information on the number one fastest growing crime in America, which is identity theft. And we are actually on day 3 of 14 days of important information. So I'm going to be going over information about what is it, some facts, who's doing it, how they're doing it, what are some prevention tips, and then of course how this would affect businesses, right? Because you're going to have small business Saturday in between there and Black Friday. So how would it affect businesses, and what are some best practices for businesses as well? So if you've been following along, and we're on day 3 now, you'll know that we've talked about the first 2 areas of identity theft right out of the bat, and that was if you'll remember, the driver's license identity theft and social security identity theft. And then yesterday, we recapped for you what is medical identity theft, the one crime that could kill you, and character and criminal identity theft. Now, what's exciting about these lives is that you are welcome to interact with me. I can see your comments and actually be able to answer them live on the screen. So today, we're going to go over this 5th area of identity theft, which is financial identity theft. And we're going to go over a new area of identity theft, which is synthetic or mosaic identity theft. So let's hop into it right now. So for those of you who are taking notes, financial identity theft is what we typically think of when we think of identity theft. And so thieves are using our information to open up accounts and existing accounts. So what's at least you would catch it if you had some sort of a monitoring service, if somebody started doing activity on a current account. But the problem would be is if they opened up a new account and started doing, nefarious things in a new account. You may or may not see it on your credit report because you're only monitoring the things that you're monitoring. And what's an interesting fact, because everyone associates financial identity theft with identity theft, but ironically, it's only about a quarter of really the issues out there. And so I've had a thief multiple times come on and drain my bank account. Once they bought some Emirates Airlines, they bought some hotels in the Middle East, and they literally drained my bank account. And so I learned a valuable lesson. Now, here's what's kind of scary about financial identity theft. If you're using your ATM, it is real money. So what they did was they went through all of my cash and my checking account because it was my ATM card. But what is that attached to? Well, that's attached to typically your savings account. And I was like, holy cow. So they ripped through all of that and they went through my entire savings account till I had 0 left there in there. Now, here's the challenge. The banks, if it's your ATM and your actual cash, have 90 days to really kind of do any kind of resolution. So in the interim, how would you pay your bills? Luckily, I'm married, so I used my husband's income, but how do you pay your bills if you don't have it for 90 days? Everything's locked up. So it's a real challenge. So one of my prevention tips, which we're going to be going into that in a few days, is really just whatever you do, don't use your ATM. So my ATM is locked up in a filing cabinet. I don't bring it with me. I don't use it only unless I'm going to the bank or I need to get some cash out. And then I put it right back where it is. And I learned the hard way, because if it is your credit card, like a true credit card, what happens is, and I recently had a terrorist take over and commandeer my Facebook. And I'm thinking, why did they want to commandeer my Facebook? That's really strange. Well, it wasn't. Apparently my credit card, I didn't even know was attached to my Facebook. And so I started getting charges. They were smart crooks. They didn't even start hitting me for about 3 to 4 days. So I kind of got off my radar thinking, I guess I'm safe. Well, then they started hitting me for $900, $200, $1,000 worth of Facebook charges for 10 days in a row. And they got up to about $10,000. Well, my rights are more protected and my banking is more protected if I'm using a credit card because it's not actual real cash. So they immediately reversed the charges. It was no problem. But had that been, again, my ATM, like it had been in the past, that could be some, challenges, because they do have 90 days. And I'm going to share with you some scary information on that. So, robbing your accounts, at least you'd find out at some point, right? But it's if they open up new accounts, right? And then they stop paying on it, it could really destroy your credit. Now, here's a funny one. I had a person that said that there's probably somebody in the country illegally that needed a social security number and opened up and bought a Cadillac Escalade in their name. Now, this is pretty interesting. They said, I was actually pleased because my credit score went up. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I pulled a credit report and realized that the person who had stole my credit was actually paying good, like doing well on a Cadillac Escalade until he wasn't. And then apparently maybe he went back to his own country, couldn't get back in. And then that truck started to default, which is how he found out there was a problem. But he couldn't figure out why his credit kept going up, his score, but it was because someone was actually paying on it. So I understand that it could, destroy credit. Often 70% of people with a financial identity theft issue also need access to an attorney as well. Because if, there's erroneous things on your account and somebody needs to write a letter to make sure that gets removed because maybe you were a victim of identity theft, it can be a challenge, but you can absolutely be held responsible, unfortunately, for these charges. And I have seen it happen before because it's in your name. What's interesting is only the government could write a bill like this, because the Fair and Credit Billing Act establishes what's reasonable procedures if you have an error. So here's what it says. It actually says this, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It says you must send a letter to your creditors that it reaches them within 60 days. If an identity thief actually changed your address on your account and you didn't receive the bill, your dispute letter still must reach the creditor within 60 days. Does anybody else see a problem with that? Like, I didn't know I had it. It would be after 60 days, which is exactly what happened with that person that had the Cadillac Escalade. They've been paying good on it for a couple of years. So it made it even worse when they started to default. How do you say, hey, it wasn't me? But then why would you pay good for a couple of years? So it can create a lot of havoc. And like I said, the law is just really interesting. And so I say that to say, there's a big challenge, with some of this that's going on, that there's kind of a catch 22. I also want to share with you, certainly, people think, oh, well, the banks are going to pay me back, right? Well, that's not always the case. What happened was the financial institutions have lost $54 billion due to just writing off stuff, right? So the credit card companies, the bank that actually gave me my money back. So they are not in the business of losing money, and they don't like it. So some of them have been retaliating. And here was a story of a woman who said, called her bank, said, hey, I was a victim of identity theft. They absconded with a bunch of money. And the bank said, no, we're not liable for this because you didn't have a robust enough firewalls, protection on your computer. And that's how they got in. So we want to make sure we've got some great firewall protection on there, and just know that you can be held 100% liable for these fraudulent charges, which might be a good opportunity to get an attorney involved, write a letter on that as well. The sixth and final area, so we've gone through the 5 areas, we're going through the 6th area now, and this will be the last one for today, is it's called building a mosaic, and it's really synthetic identity theft. So let's just give you an example of this. How many people agree that there is a lot of information out there now because of those genealogy type websites? In fact, they were able to, convict criminals that have been dormant for many, many years, kind of tracing their genealogy there. But let's just say, for instance, you're on these genealogy things. What's on there? Well, your mother's maiden name, potentially your, old addresses and all these kind of things. So it can be easy, number one, to go in there and figure out what your information is. But number two is, I could just take your social, somebody else's credit card, somebody else's family tree, use your maiden name, and be able to create what's called a mosaic. So I think these family history trees have done a great job because they've helped us locate, my friend found her adopted family in there. I found, we found criminals in there, but the challenge is a lot of your personal information is there. So what we're going to talk about next, which I'm really excited about, tomorrow, we're going to talk about some facts. So we're going to share with you some of the facts that may startle you, may be shocking to you. So for the first 3 days, we've gone over what is identity theft. We went over the 6 areas of identity theft. And then tomorrow, we're going to share with you some facts. Then we're going to go over who's doing it. Then we're going to go over how they're perpetrating this crime. Then we're going to go over some risk management tips, because you can't prevent it. So when I say prevention tips, it seems like we can prevent it. We can't. The genie's out of the bottle. And then we're going to talk about how it relates to business and what some businesses can do to thwart against some ransomwares and some cyber attacks. So with that, take care, take charge, and I'm excited. I will see you all back here tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.